There was no wedding, no rings, no vows, no paperwork of any kind. For most of human history, marriage simply did not exist. Not as an idea, not as a word, not as anything official at all. And yet, people still paired up. They still raised children together. They still stayed loyal to one person for years. So today we're asking a strange question. Did ancient humans actually get married? Or did they just quietly pair up with nothing official at all? This isn't just a historical footnote. It changes how we think about love itself. Let's separate two ideas that get mixed up constantly: pair bonding and marriage. Pair bonding is biological. It's an attachment between two people, built from chemistry, trust, and time spent together. Marriage is different. Marriage is social. It's a relationship the wider group formally recognizes, with rules attached, sometimes property attached, sometimes inheritance attached. Ancient humans very likely had the first one, long before the second. Think of it like this. A friendship can exist without a signed contract. A romantic bond can work exactly the same way. The feeling doesn't need permission to exist. Only the label needs a group to agree on it. Two very different systems, often confused as one. One lives inside a person, the other lives inside a community's shared agreement. How do we actually know this? A few clues. Hidden in plain sight. Remember that human babies are born extremely helpless. They need years of intense care. A single parent alone would have struggled badly. Two committed parents had a much better shot at success. That pressure alone favors long-term pairing, even without any ceremony forcing it. There's also the bonding chemistry we're built with. Oxytocin and dopamine reward staying close to one partner, not just brief encounters. Biology was quietly pushing toward loyalty long before culture caught up. There's a physical clue too. Humans lack the huge canine teeth many competitive primates have. Large canines usually signal violent competition between males. Smaller canines suggest that competition eased over time. Another quiet sign pointing toward pairing instead of fighting. Even our close primate relatives show partial versions of this. Some primates form partnerships lasting several breeding seasons. Humans appear to have pushed that tendency even further. There's a behavioral clue too, seen in modern hunter-gatherer groups. Groups like the San people of southern Africa. Long-term pairing shows up as the clear cultural default, even without any legal marriage system enforcing it, which strongly suggests this pattern runs deeper than any single culture. So, what did relationships look like in small ancient bands? Mostly informal. A man and a woman would simply start living together, sharing food, sharing shelter, sharing the work of raising children. The whole group simply recognized this by watching it happen. No ceremony was required for that recognition. If the pairing ended, that was informal too. Some anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups still see this pattern today. Relationships that form and shift without any formal contract behind them. Some pairings lasted a lifetime. Others lasted only a season or two. Both outcomes were completely normal. There was no shame attached to either one, because there was no institution watching to judge it. Jealousy still existed, of course. Disputes over partners happened, but the group usually settled it socially, not legally, through conversation, pressure, or a simple separation. Children in these groups often had multiple caring adults around them, not just their two biological parents, which meant a pairing ending was rarely catastrophic for a child. The wider group simply absorbed the change, not through any court contract or official record. So when did things start becoming official? The honest answer is gradually. Some of the earliest hints come from grave sites. Archaeologists have found couples buried together deliberately, arranged with care, not by accident, which suggests the bond was seen as meaningful by the group. Meaningful enough to mark, even after death. Other early clues involve exchanged objects, gifts given between families, not just between two individuals. That single shift matters enormously, because it means the relationship stopped being private and started being everyone's business. Some of these burial sites are genuinely ancient, stretching back tens of thousands of years, long before farming, long before writing, which tells us something important. The instinct to honor a bond came before any formal system did. None of these early customs looked anything like a modern wedding. But the underlying instinct was already unmistakably there. Small signals, repeated across many different ancient sites. The real turning point arrived with farming. Hunter-gatherers rarely owned much of anything permanent. Farmers owned land, owned crops, owned stored food that could last for months. And suddenly, a brand new question mattered enormously. Who inherits all of this when I die? That question needed a clear answer. Clear parentage, clear responsibility, clear rules everyone in the group agreed to follow. Marriage, as a formal institution, solved exactly that problem. It wasn't invented for romance, it was invented for property, and it grew from there. Picture two neighboring farming families, both with fields, both with stored grain. If their children paired up without any formal agreement, whose land did the resulting children eventually inherit? That uncertainty could tear entire communities apart. So communities built a system to prevent it. Compare that to nomadic hunter-gatherer life. If you own almost nothing permanent, inheritance barely matters. There's very little to fight over in the first place. Farming flipped that completely. Suddenly, staying in one place meant serious stakes. And serious stakes meant serious rules. Permanent homes meant permanent neighbors, and permanent neighbors meant permanent reputations to protect. A messy, informal pairing suddenly had real social consequences. It could affect trade, alliances, even safety. Once land and inheritance entered the picture, everything sped up. Marriages started getting formally announced, witnessed by the wider community, sometimes recorded through gift exchanges between families, sometimes marked with specific rituals. The details varied wildly across different early societies, but the underlying goal stayed the same everywhere. Make the bond official, make the inheritance clear, make sure everyone agreed on the rules in advance. In many early farming societies, marriage involved an exchange. Livestock, tools, or food passed between families. A visible public sign that both sides agreed to the arrangement. This is where the earliest wedding customs likely trace back to. Not romance first. Practical agreement first, romance layered on top later. Different regions built different versions of this system. Some societies centered it around the bride's family. Others centered it around the groom's family instead. The specific customs varied enormously, but almost every early farming society landed on some version of formal marriage, independently, in different places, at different times, which suggests it wasn't a random cultural accident. It was a practical solution, discovered again and again, a shift that still shapes weddings happening today. Elders often played a central role in these early arrangements. Their experience carried real weight in the decision, a living record of what had worked for previous generations. So here's the real shape of the story. Love and bonding came first. Biology built that part in, long before anyone was watching. Marriage came much later, built by farming, property, and inheritance, not by romance. The feeling is ancient. The paperwork is comparatively new. None of this makes the bond any less real. If anything, it makes it more impressive. Humans built loyalty into their biology first, then spent thousands of years building systems around it, trying to protect something that already worked on its own. It's worth sitting with that for a second. The paperwork exists because people already cared enough to need protecting. The rules came second, the feeling came first. We often assume paperwork creates commitment. Ancient history suggests it was actually the other way around. That's a strangely comforting thought if you sit with it. So let's go back to where we started. No wedding, no rings, no paperwork, and yet somehow still together. That was never a gap in ancient human life. It was simply how bonding worked, long before paperwork existed at all. Marriage as we know it is a relatively recent invention, but the bond underneath it is not recent at all. That part is ancient, built in, long before ceremonies, contracts, or rings ever existed. The next time you see a wedding ring, remember what it's actually standing in for. A promise humans were already keeping, long before anyone thought to symbolize it. Two systems, one biological, one social, working together ever since.